Tonight on the Midnight Drive, we begin our journey through California, a place built on reinvention, on performance, on beauty, on the dream of becoming somebody. But beneath the palm trees, neon lights, ocean sunsets, and Hollywood glamour, is something far stranger. A constant pressure to transform yourself into something bigger, brighter, richer, prettier, more successful, and more visible. California can feel magical, but it can also feel emotionally exhausting. Tonight, we explore the mythology of California. Hollywood, ambition, fame, loneliness, coastline, beauty, wildfire skies, dreamers, performers, and the strange emotional weight carried by the state that turned illusion into an industry. California might be the most mythologized state in the United States of America. And it's not just because Hollywood. It's because California sells transformation. That's the promise embedded into the entire atmosphere of the place. You can arrive as nobody, and you can leave as somebody. At least that's the story they tell you. The dream, the myth. And honestly, that mythology is powerful enough that people uproot their entire lives chasing it. Think about it. Actors, musicians, writers, influencers, filmmakers, comedians, artists, people searching for visibility, people searching for reinvention, people searching for meaning. California attracts dreamers because the state itself feels like possibility. Palm trees swaying beside ocean cliffs. Warm air at midnight. Sunsets that look digitally enhanced even when they're real. Old convertibles sliding beneath sodium orange streetlights. Beach parking lots glowing under vapor-colored skies. For a while, it can genuinely feel magical, especially at night. Driving through Los Angeles after dark almost feels cinematic, just by default. Neon signs, smoggy haze, distant helicopters, billboards towering over the traffic. People dressed like they're heading toward auditions, parties, photo shoots, meetings, premieres, opportunities. Everybody is moving with purpose. Or at least they're performing with purpose. That's an important distinction because California doesn't just attract ambition. It attracts performance. And after enough time there, you start realizing how blurred the line becomes between who people are and who they desperately want to become. That pressure changes people psychologically, especially in entertainment spaces. One of the strangest things about Los Angeles is how quickly conversations can start sounding like elevator pitches. The Uber driver wants to be a singer. The waiter wants to be a screenwriter. The bartender has a pilot script. The hotel employee is building a following online. Everyone has a project, a dream, a strategy, a pitch, and honestly, there's something very admirable about that level of ambition. It takes courage to chase creative work, to move across the entire country chasing uncertainty, to believe that your art matters enough to risk instability for it. But there's another side to that atmosphere too. Desperation. Because California also sells people an incredibly dangerous fantasy. The idea of overnight transformation. The belief that success happens suddenly. That somebody important might discover you instantly. That one opportunity changes everything forever. And maybe that fantasy survives because Hollywood itself packages success into neat, emotionally satisfying narratives. The montage, the big break, the phone call, the contract, the overnight star. But real creative careers rarely function that way. Most artistic success is very slow. Back-end, administrative, networking, failures, rejections, invisible labor, consistency, timing, luck, years of uncertainty most people never see. That disconnect between the dream and the machinery under it creates enormous emotional instability in California. Because people arrive expecting transformation, but often encounter exhaustion instead. That's one reason Los Angeles can feel simultaneously glamorous and emotionally hollow, depending on where you are and who you're around. Up in the Hollywood Hills at night, looking down over endless nights, California can feel almost euphoric, like possibility itself became geography. But down on the streets, among struggling artists, transients, and people barely holding themselves together financially, the atmosphere shifts dramatically. You start noticing how many people are trying desperately to become visible, to matter, to be chosen. And beneath all that confidence and self-promotion, there's often profound loneliness hiding underneath. And that may be one of the saddest parts of California psychologically. The state is crowded constantly, yet so many people seem emotionally isolated inside their own ambitions. Everybody competing to be seen, to be heard, to stand out, and eventually the noise itself becomes exhausting. Boardwalk musicians competing against nearby performers. Influencers staging moments for cameras. Buskers fighting for attention beneath giant advertisements selling impossible lifestyles. The atmosphere can feel emotionally overloading. Like everybody is simultaneously performing and searching for validation at the same time. And honestly, that emotional tension may explain why California feels so psychologically strange compared to most places. Because image matters in California at an entirely different level. Appearance, connections, visibility, branding, perception, who you know, who notices you, who remembers you. Hollywood transformed illusion into an industry. And once illusion becomes profitable, people start reshaping themselves around visibility itself. Not always dishonestly. Sometimes survival requires performance, especially in entertainment spaces. We'll talk about this more in the next segment. What do you guys think about it? We'd love to hear what you're thinking in the comments below, wherever you might be listening tonight. It's always a blast having you along for the ride on the Midnight Drive. If you'd like to reach out to us, leave us a message, 402-610-2836. All right, think about this. Prolonged performance creates strange emotional side effects. People become untethered from themselves. Identity becomes flexible, curated, marketed, and eventually, some people stop knowing where the performance ends and the real person begins. That's why California can feel both exciting and emotionally disorienting simultaneously. The beauty is real. The ambition is real. The creativity is real. But so is the exhaustion. So is the comparison. So is the pressure. And maybe that's the central contradiction sitting underneath California itself. It's a place where millions of people arrive hoping to become somebody, while quietly fearing they may disappear completely if they fail. Los Angeles may be one of the loneliest, crowded places in the United States of America. Which sounds strange at first, because, well, let's look at some things. The city is overflowing constantly with traffic, conversations, nightlife, music, networking, performance, parties, meetings, auditions, influencers, tourists. Everything feels loud, bright, moving, alive, and yet, underneath all that movement, there's often a strange emotional distance between people. Maybe because so much of Los Angeles revolves around presentation. Not in a dishonest way, just professionally, socially, strategically. People in entertainment spaces are constantly aware of perception. Have you ever thought about that before? People in entertainment spaces are constantly aware of perception. How they look, how they sound, who they know, what opportunities they might be connected to. And eventually, conversations can start feeling less like connection and more like positioning. That's one of the strangest psychological effects California seems to have on people. The state rewards visibility. So naturally, people start curating themselves around visibility. Not just celebrities, everyone. Influencers, musicians, writers, actors, content creators, even ordinary people slowly begin treating themselves like personal brands. And social media amplified all of this dramatically. Now, everybody exists in a kind of permanent low-level audition. Posting, performing, marketing, maintaining image, trying to appear successful before success actually arrives. That atmosphere changes people emotionally over time because comparison becomes unavoidable. Somebody always seems more connected, more attractive, more successful, more visible, more important, more invited, more established. And eventually, California can start feeling less like a place and more like a scoreboard. That emotional pressure exhausts people quietly, especially creative people, because art already comes bundled with insecurity naturally. Creating something meaningful requires vulnerability. You expose parts of yourself publicly and hope that they resonate with strangers. That's emotionally risky on its own. But Los Angeles adds another layer: competition at scale. Thousands upon thousands of people, all chasing visibility simultaneously. And honestly, many of them are talented. That's another uncomfortable reality. Talent alone is rarely enough there. Connection matters. Timing matters. Access matters. Luck matters. Proximity matters. Being connected becomes its own social currency. And people can lose themselves chasing proximity to importance. That's one reason celebrity culture becomes so psychologically powerful in California. Celebrities stop feeling like ordinary people. They become symbols. Proof that transformation is possible. Proof that reinvention worked for someone. And eventually, the public starts projecting meaning onto famous people far beyond who they actually are. That's the foundation of celebrity worship. Not stupidity. It's longing. It's escape. It's parasocial attachment. People build emotional relationships with actors, musicians, podcasts, influencers, television personalities, because familiar faces start feeling emotionally safe, comforting, present, part of daily life, especially in lonely modern environments. That emotional attachment is understandable, but California industrialized it. Hollywood realized human beings don't merely consume stories. They attach themselves to identities, aspirations, lifestyles, fantasy versions of existence. And once aspiration itself becomes monetized, people start performing versions of themselves, constantly trying to appear desirable, interesting, glamorous, or important. That's why Los Angeles can feel emotionally disorienting. You're surrounded by people attempting to become something larger than themselves, sometimes beautifully, and sometimes tragically. The tragedy and glamour are inseparable there. You can't really have one without the other, because glamour itself is built on longing, luxury, beauty, recognition, status, escape from ordinary life. But beneath glamour often sits the uncomfortable realization that external success could not fully answer internal questions. Questions like, why am I still unhappy? Why don't I feel fulfilled? Who am I outside this image? Was this actually worth it? California amplifies those questions because the state constantly encourages reinvention. And reinvention can become psychologically addictive. New image, new project, new persona, new opportunity, new followers, new connections. But endless reinvention can also leave people untethered from themselves, especially if they never stop long enough to ask, who am I when nobody is watching? That's why parts of Los Angeles can feel emotionally hollow despite being surrounded by excitement constantly. Because excitement and fulfillment are not the same thing. Visibility and connection are not the same thing. Fame and identity are not the same thing. And California sometimes blurs those distinctions until people start mistaking recognition for meaning. What do you make of this? You, my friends, are listening to The Midnight Drive. For all of California's glamour and overstimulation, there's another side to the state that feels almost impossibly peaceful. The coastline, the cliffs, the ocean air. Long drives along Highway 1 with the Pacific stretching endlessly beside you. And honestly, that contrast may be part of what makes California feel so emotionally strange. Because within a single day, the state can move from overwhelming sensory overload to absolute stillness. Los Angeles feels crowded. The coastline feels expansive. Hollywood feels performative. The ocean feels honest. That emotional whiplash changes people, especially at night. There's something surreal about driving lonely coastal roads after dark. No giant billboards, no influencer culture, no auditions, no networking. Just waves crashing somewhere beyond the darkness. Cold, ocean air moving through the open windows. Distant headlights winding around cliffs. And for a moment, California stops feeling like a performance. It just feels beautiful. Truly beautiful. That's important emotionally because California cannot be reduced into cynicism. The beauty is real. The coastline genuinely feels restorative. Big Sur, Malibu, Monterey, the cliffs near Mendocino. The state contains moments so visually overwhelming that they almost feel spiritually cleansing. And maybe that's part of why people keep arriving there despite everything else. California still feels like possibility. Even after disappointment, even after burnout, even after collapse. But woven directly into that beauty is another constant California emotion. Fragility. The state never feels fully stable. Earthquakes, wildfires, drought, mudslides, climate anxiety. The big one. California exists beside catastrophe. Constantly. And maybe living beside that level of unpredictability shapes the psychology of the state more than people realize. Because paradise always feels slightly temporary there. The coastline is breathtaking, but erosion slowly reshapes it. Neighborhoods feel permanent until wildfire maps appear on the news. Entire communities can suddenly find themselves preparing evacuation plans. Smoke turns skies orange. Ash drifts through the air. Traffic freezes. People flee. And suddenly the illusion of permanence disappears completely. That atmosphere creates a strange emotional contradiction. California encourages people to build dream lives, while simultaneously reminding them how quickly everything can change. Isn't that dark? That tension exists everywhere there, especially in Los Angeles. Movie sets, soundstage, temporary installations, pop-up events, influencer houses, short-term leases, people constantly arriving and leaving again. The entire state can start feeling transient psychologically, like everyone is participating in something temporary, even while pretending permanence exists. And that may be why California pairs so naturally with apocalypse imagery and pop culture. Earthquake movies, wildfire footage, climate collapse stories, dystopian Los Angeles skylines. The state already feels cinematic. So naturally, people project large-scale endings onto it constantly. California feels too iconic not to imagine collapsing dramatically. But there's something else underneath that too, a deeper fear. The fear that modern life itself may be unsustainable. California simply visualizes that anxiety more vividly than most places. Extreme wealth beside visible suffering. Environmental beauty beside environmental instability. Luxury beside drought. Fame beside addiction. Innovation beside emotional burnout. The contradictions become impossible to ignore after a while. And maybe that's why California often feels emotionally overstimulated. The state is constantly oscillating between beauty and collapse, aspiration and exhaustion, peace and pressure, fantasy and reality. Nothing stays emotionally simple there for very long. Even the sunsets feel dramatic. Wildfire smoke, turning skies into surreal gradients of pink, orange, purple, deep red. It's beautiful, but also unsettling once you remember why the sky looks that way. That's California in a single image. Breathtaking and alarming simultaneously. And honestly, that atmosphere affects people psychologically over time. You start realizing how fragile modern systems actually are. How quickly infrastructure can fail under pressure. How dependent daily life is on stability. How vulnerable cities become during disaster. Especially in California, where population density, traffic, geography, and environmental conditions can all turn emergencies into chaos very quickly. That's one reason wildfire evacuations feel so terrifying there. Too many people, too many cars, too few escape routes. And suddenly, paradise starts feeling claustrophobic. That emotional instability lingers beneath California constantly. Not enough to stop people from loving the place, but enough to make the beauty feel temporary somehow. And maybe temporary beauty feels more emotionally intense, precisely because it feels vulnerable. That idea exists all across California culture. Fame fades. Trends fade. Neighborhoods change. Studios close. Restaurants disappear. Influencers vanish. Artists burn out. Entire identities get reinvented repeatedly. California moves fast enough that permanence itself starts feeling uncertain. And maybe that's why the state feels so psychologically unique compared to the rest of America. It's one of the only places where paradise, ambition, reinvention, glamour, instability, beauty, loneliness, and collapse all exist visibly beside each other at the exact same time. You're listening to The Midnight Drive. Hollywood may be one of the strangest psychological environments ever created. Not because it's haunted, because it's industrialized illusion. That's the part people feel instinctively when they visit Los Angeles for the first time. Everything looks familiar. Not because they've been there before, but because they've already seen California thousands of times through screens, movies, television, music videos, advertisement, social media. California became one of the primary visual languages of modern culture. Palm trees, neon, pool parties, convertibles, sunsets, luxury, fame, beauty, aspiration itself. Hollywood exported those images across the world so successfully that people started confusing the aesthetic with reality. And sometimes California encourages that confusion because glamour is incredibly seductive, isn't it? Old Hollywood especially, the Roosevelt Hotel, Hollywood Forever Cemetery, vintage movie palaces, classic convertibles parked beneath neon signs, black and white celebrity photography, cocktail lounges glowing gold beneath low lighting. The entire atmosphere feels elegant, timeless, almost mythological. And yet, beneath all that glamour, there's always been sadness woven into the fabric of Hollywood, too. Maybe because glamour itself is built on longing. People don't worship celebrities merely because they're talented. They worship celebrities who appear to represent escape, beauty, validation, success, transformation, visibility, and importance. Hollywood became a machine capable of manufacturing aspiration itself. And aspiration is emotionally powerful because ordinary life can feel painfully ordinary sometimes. People want transcendence. They want to matter. They want to feel chosen. Hollywood sells that fantasy constantly. But fantasy becomes psychologically dangerous when people start expecting it to resolve deeper emotional emptiness internally. Because external success cannot automatically answer existential questions. Questions like, who am I? What was I made for? Why am I still unhappy? Why do I feel so disconnected? Why doesn't this fulfillment seem to last? That's why glamour can start feeling tragic when you look at it long enough. The lights, the makeup, the speeches, the alcohol, the luxury, the performance, the drugs, the parties in the hills overlooking the city. It all looks beautiful from the outside. But underneath often sits enormous pressure. Image maintenance, comparison, addiction, loneliness, identity instability, fear of irrelevance, fear of aging, fear of disappearing. Hollywood preserves youth obsessively because the industry itself fears becoming invisible. That anxiety radiates outward culturally. especially now in the social media era where everybody feels pressure to remain visible constantly. And maybe that's what makes California feel psychologically exhausting after enough time there. Visibility becomes currency. Attention becomes survival. Image becomes labor. And eventually, people can start feeling disconnected from themselves beneath the performance of it all. That's why old Hollywood stories still fascinate people on an emotional level. Marilyn Monroe, River Phoenix, Judy Garland, Heath Ledger, countless artists and actors who seemed adored publicly while struggling privately. People recognize something tragic inside those stories instinctively. The realization that admiration does not automatically create peace. California may be one of the only places where illusion became powerful enough to reshape reality itself. Entire industries now revolve around perception. Branding, image management, influencer culture, publicity, self-curation, online identity. Hollywood simply pioneered the blueprint earlier than everyone else. The performance eventually spread everywhere. And maybe that's why California feels strangely ahead of culture and emotionally exhausted by culture all at the same time. The state became a testing ground for modern identity itself. Who are you publicly? Who are you privately? How different are those versions? How long can somebody sustain performance before becoming untethered from themselves emotionally? Those questions haunt California constantly, even outside Hollywood, especially because so many people arrive there believing transformation alone will finally make them feel whole. A new city, a new image, a new audience, a new opportunity, a new version of themselves. And sometimes reinvention genuinely helps people. California absolutely contains creativity, beauty, innovation, freedom, and artistic energy unlike almost anywhere else. That part is very real. But reinvention can also become addictive. Because if identity itself starts feeling unstable, people may never stop rebuilding themselves, searching for fulfillment and external transformation alone cannot provide. And maybe that's the final contradiction sitting underneath California itself. It's one of the most beautiful places in the United States of America. It's one of the most creative places in the United States of America. It's one of the most culturally influential places in the United States of America. And simultaneously, it's one of the loneliest. Because in a state built around becoming somebody, people can spend their entire lives terrified of becoming nobody.